The work that I do is primarily around helping people release their potential. So I believe that all of us have this innate potential inside of us, but most of us have probably not tapped into that, and that we have so much more that we could offer, so much more value that we could drive, so much more satisfaction that we could realize. So sort of my theme is realize all of that, which means understand it. It means grasp a hold of it with both of your hands. So even if you look at the definition of realize, it has lots of different definitions, all the way from insight to reflection to actually taking a hold of it and being there, being in that moment. And I think a lot of people spend their entire life kind of moving through the flow, maybe responding to what comes to them. Maybe they take very good care of it. They take very good care of their tasks and their responsibilities, but are they really designing a life that is vibrant and dynamic, exciting, that should at sometimes sort of take your breath away? I think our lives every once in a while should just have this result. It just takes your breath away. And I don't think people live like that so much. I don't think that everyone lives that way or even sees the options that are before them. So my job is really about kind of cracking that open and saying you have more options than you even realize. Whether or not you are exploring those, realizing those, or amplifying those options, I don't know. But my job is to help you see if you'd like to. Okay, so the 5 laws are game changers for sure. And in every workshop, I am, I'm holding the books up proudly and saying, you've got to read this. And I found it difficult to apply the laws. Now, the law of value for me was so easy to do because I really believe that opportunity always chases value. So one of the things that I'm constantly sort of evangelizing is if you want more, you have to be more. You have to increase your value. And the magic around that I tell my audiences is that you have complete control over the value that you drive. So some people are in situations that are not fully using their potential. Did you know that the majority of people would tell you that in my job, I'm not using my best stuff? I'm not using my strengths. I'm not using my skills. I'm underutilized. My skills are unrecognized, and I am undervalued. And so my message is, how are you bringing those strengths to market? How are you driving value? How are you aligning yourself with the priorities of the organization that you work for example, so that you can drive real value? So that one came very natural for me. The law of influence also felt more natural because it's really about, it's not about you at all. It's about that centering of yourself, so that ripple effect. As I like to say, that the people around you are picking up on your emotional clues. So I come at that law more from an emotional influence. How are you kind of setting the table, setting the stage with your audience, even an audience of one? How are they picking up on your energy? And what is that doing to the situation? The one that was hardest for me is the law of receptivity. I hear that a lot because I'd rather have the answer to your question than need you to answer mine. I would rather solve your problem than have you solve mine. I will babysit your cat, but I probably would never ask you to watch my dog, right? It's just more comfortable for me to give than to receive, and I'm learning. I really am learning that if you don't receive, you're blocking someone else's opportunity to give, and you're jamming up the whole process. So I keep telling myself, don't jam up the process. Don't be the log jam. So I do teach those laws, and I find that in every one of my workshops, seminars, presentations, keynotes, all around the world, they all fit nicely because my work is around communication and leadership and mentoring, right? It is around a life well lived. It is designing a life that is well lived. The laws just fit. It's really interesting because I work with human beings, but the books that I write, the publishers have marketed those to women. So the covers have, the shoe or the lipstick, something dramatic like that. And so that has been kind of a niche that's been created for me by the marketing of my books. The gents will say, if they pull the cover off the book, they're human skills. But I do love working with the women when there's women's conferences, women's associations. There's just something about a large group of women and how they communicate, and and the energy that they can create and what they're reaching for. And I find that there's that commonality too. Women share some things. It's not arbitrary, of course, but women can, we communicate to relate and to connect. And sometimes women would tell you that they're really good at serving and serving and serving, but they're not as good at asking, negotiating for what they need to be successful. So it's really wonderful to teach them. You don't have to lose yourself in that. You can be a great negotiator and still be a lovely, graceful, feminine woman, right? I like guys. Like, my dad's a guy. My son is a guy. I'm married to a guy. So there's nothing in my message that would ever be bashing the men, right? My whole premise is that you don't have to take your power from anyone. I really don't like that message in the workplace, that women have to take their power from someone else. You have your own power, right? You don't have to take your power. In fact, your presence, your emotional influence should be empowering everyone around you. And it really is wonderful to make that connection with women. I love that question of legacy. I think we should all have one, and that's really something that is a primary part of my work. With even the Fortune 100 clients, it's helping the leaders find your legacy, make that impact, change the game. And really, when you start asking people, even high levels, what is your legacy going to be? I mean, how are you going to leave this place better than you found it? How are you leaving this place with a higher value? How are you impacting everyone here? And it's really interesting to me. The question is very exciting, and most executives get excited thinking about it, but many of them have not. And when they start thinking about what I want to be known for, the difference that I want to make, the change that I want to craft or design, they really engage. So my short answer would be that legacy engages you. It engages you at a completely different level. If I were to say my legacy, I want to leave a legacy of mentoring, because I think we should have one, we should be one. I work very hard at earning the title, the subtitle, Thought Leader in Mentoring. It is my life study. It is wrapped around all of the work that I do, because mentoring is that very human connection that says, as individual or even in small groups, we are going to help each other find the way, and we will help each other be better than we ever could have been all by ourselves. I think our lives should come with that disclaimer, do not attempt any of this alone. So the idea that I could be a mentor and that I would reach for my mentors, and that through that process we all grow and we all accomplish something that is amazing, but is uniquely amazing, because that's the thing. It's a one-size-fits-one, really. Right? And that's why, for example, organizations have a really hard time with career pathing, because if I want to career path myself, then I got to follow their org chart. And maybe I don't fit their org chart. Maybe my path will be different. And I think through mentoring, people find their path, the one that fits them. Sometimes the moves might be lateral. They might be vertical. Sometimes I've seen people take a very conscious step back so that they could create more runway for the future. And that, my last book, Career Moves, was really about how to create your path. Don't be so worried about following the path. In fact, be very careful about just following a path that is unfolding before you. It might be okay, but what will you miss if you don't find your path? What will you miss? What will you miss experiencing, and what will you miss accomplishing? For me, the Go-Giver Conference is a collection of people who have made a conscious decision to be the best that they can be, to grow. It's an audience of volunteers, not hostages. These are people that are making that investment in themselves, and they are mentoring each other. And I find that at Bob Burke's events, that the speakers are fascinating, but the audience is equally as energizing. It's just this collection of people who really are taking personal responsibility, and they are reaching for something beyond themselves, and they're very creative as well. It's a pleasure to be in the company of people like that. I always leave his events feeling very challenged, a little uncomfortable, like it's time to release a new version, right? It's time to do something new, and the energy of the group. And when I was speaking with this group, they're just a lovely audience to be with. They are so receptive. There's your law of receptivity. They are so receptive. They're taking it all in, and they're taking lots of notes, and the Twitter stream is going crazy. They're capturing all of those nuggets, and then you talk to them at the break and they tell you about how they're going to apply that and what they saw, something profound popped in their head. And it might have been something you just triggered by something that you said, and then they went on their path and said, that's how I can use it. So it's really rewarding for me to work with people that not only are going to take it all in, but they're not just observers. They're actively participating in the process, and they're actively processing the information. They are making that conscious decision. How can I apply this into my life? And I think that might be what sets this whole thing apart. It really isn't an observation kind of a weekend. It is really about digging deep, really looking at where you are, thinking about where you want to be, and making some of those decisions to say, who do I need to know? Who do I need to connect with? What is my next step going to be? Where do I need to grow my skills, right? It is really, and I think this might be the most fun of all, and there's enough for all of us. We can freely share that information. I think people on that stage give a lot of information out there, right? There's not a lot of, keeping things back and holding things back. It is a free-flowing, information session, a lot of give and take. And at the end of it, I feel like when I leave these events, I probably learn just as much as the people in the seats. I am a big believer in the whole idea of collaborating, and that the idea of helping other people. There's that law of value. If I can just help enough other people be successful. And I think sometimes, and I was guilty of this as well. My background is in banking. I spent most of my corporate career in banks and really successfully, managing my career all the way up to the executive level. And when I left banking and became a consultant and a speaker, it was so fascinating to me that I thought like a banker. There was this pie, and we're all competing for our little pieces of it, and I want to grow my piece, so that means I have to take your piece away. And then I finally learned that we can make the pie bigger, and that my success doesn't need to take away from your success. In fact, if we all were just a little more mindful of that success, that abundance in success, and we think from instead of scarcity, we think abundantly, we can actually create something brand new. And that was a revelation to me. I was really used to competing for my results. And then I found out that my results really do come from the success of other people. And it's also much more rewarding as well. So that whole idea of collaborating and sharing information. I think employers do this too. I scold them about it all the time. This whole idea of, that all the information lives at some level of the organization, and then the people that are actually, facing with customers and doing the work don't have everything that they need to know. That is ridiculous to me. Tell them everything. Unless it is illegal and immoral to do so, tell them everything. A good example, I think it's ridiculous when employees wait for a whole year to find out how they're doing on their job. That's their data. They own it. They should be able to tell you at any time where they stand against their standards or their goals. They should have access to the information. They should be managing that data. So really, I guess the theme is collaboration and empowering people with information. I'm a big believer in pushing decisions to the lowest level possible. The person who has to live with that decision. It's not always possible. Like when my son was 2 and getting ready to run out into the middle of a busy street, I didn't say, he's going to learn from that, right? I pulled him back on the curb. But there are so many times when we can allow people choice. And choice breeds judgment, right? And I can grow in my insight, and I can feel and sense my impact, and I can find my value. And I really think that if I had a mission, it would be to sort of release that into people. You are more powerful than you think you are, and you are more amazing than you're allowing yourself to be. My purpose is to help people realize, right, that destiny. And what I get concerned about is when you ask people. Just recently I was doing a presentation on that goal setting, that having a vision for your life, and that brand called you. And one of the exercises was for people to write down, what do you want to have, what do you want to do, what do you want to become, that you don't have now, right? What are some of those things? And they were just kind of brainstorming. And I would say, just very informal research, but in a group of, I don't know, a couple of hundred people, I will tell you that probably 30% of them sat there staring at the ceiling. They don't know how to dream. We have forgotten how to dream. We are so busy responding or reacting to what's coming at us so that we don't step back and say, I want to design a life, not a life by default, but one that is by design, where I make some conscious decisions about who I am, where I want to go, what I want to accomplish, what is my purpose. And I do believe that we all have purpose. And I believe that lives that are well lived have found that. They're in love with it, and they are pursuing it with every ounce of their energy. My vision globally would be that developing leaders who really do empower people, that we've gotten into this sort of command and control, and then as we face some of the difficult circumstances in our economy and the workplace, that we actually are, I think, sort of dumbing people down. People don't know how to make a decision. For example, leaders will lend their judgment, like a library book that has to be returned at the end of the day. That we would create a thinking people who feel powerful in their place, and they feel totally engaged. They understand their impact. I think that's a huge virus out there in the workplaces. People don't understand their impact. I don't know how I can make a difference. I don't feel or sense my power. So why in the world would I ever use it? So if I were to think about, in terms of this a global initiative, it would be, we've got to really empower people and engage people. With the clients that I work with, I hear that word constantly: customer engagement and employee engagement. And it seems to be elusive. I don't think it's elusive at all. I think it's common sense stuff. But we're going to have to stop over controlling, right? And we're going to have to start empowering people, not giving them a script to follow, but teaching them how to communicate and how to think and how to trust themselves. And by the way, we're going to have to start trusting them more. For me personally, my vision for myself is that, I love the whole idea of inspiring that thought. I'm not paid to make people feel comfortable. I'm actually paid to make them feel a little uncomfortable, for whatever time that I have with them. I would like to think that my vision is asking the really good question, not necessarily having all of the answers, because my job isn't to give you the answer, it's to help you find your own. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, I want to keep every one of the appointments that has been set before me. I do believe in divine appointments. I've been in rooms with 1,000 people and thinking it was a pretty good performance, and at the end of that there will be one person standing against a wall weeping or waiting to ask the question, and you realize I might have just flown halfway across the world to talk to one person, and you know what? I'm pretty determined to keep every one of those appointments. The strategic sense of vision is that, that forward thinking, that long-term thinking, it's anticipating the future. For me, vision is in my soul. The vision is when it resonates with me that I am in this moment, I'm impacting something that has eternal significance. I think when people attend my sessions, a lot happens. They're gonna hear some really innovative ideas. There will be some aha moments, those moments when it just clicks in their brain, that synapse I like to call it, where I think I'm very good at connecting what is unfamiliar with what is very, very familiar, so that you can quickly interpret that, internalize it, and leave with some solid action plans. I think people in my sessions feel deeply respected and valued where they are, for who they are. And I think that they leave there with a greater sense of who they can be. And if I can do that, then it is really that is my mission. If I can leave people with that sort of, I'm going out of here and I'm going to try some things. Maybe the courage to explore, take a little more risk, because I really like to push on that a little bit. I don't think you have to leave your comfort zone, but we should be kicking out the edges all the time. So why should people come and learn and grow and play with me? It is a wonderful, sort of nurturing, encouraging, challenging, innovative experience, and very experiential. In terms of the core of who I am deeply faithful. I have strong faith. My values would include things like exploration and risk-taking and creativity and innovation, and really challenging some of that status quo. I love deeply, I feel passionately, and I collect the stories of the most amazing people all around the world. And I love hearing the story. And I think that's part of the process too, is helping people tell their story in a way that really is reflective of who they are. And they can also be very vulnerable. I think we create a safe place for people to just self-disclose, so they don't have to hide to grow. I can put it all out there and I can grow from that place. I also believe in blessing my audience. I want them to feel deeply blessed when they leave, because I think communication is not about you at all. I think it's about how people feel when they're with you, and I think it's about how they feel when they leave you. And if I can leave a little bit of that residue with them, sometimes people say when they're reading my books, they can hear my voice in their head, and it's just sort of saying, you know what, rock on, just rock on. You're okay. Everything is okay, and you need to just rock on. One of the stories that I love the most, and I wrote about it in Career Moves, is this young bank teller. And my background is in banking, so of course I connected with her right away. She's going to school full-time, and she's working full-time. She's getting her finance degree. And she decides that, back to that whole org chart thing, she starts looking at the career path for a teller. And quite honestly, it doesn't impress her. It's not inspiring at all. She would become a head teller and then maybe an operations manager, something like that. And not that that wouldn't be a perfect path for someone, right? But it wasn't her path. So she started exploring. I love that word. She started meeting people around this huge financial center to try to figure out, what do I want? How am I going to put this really great education to work? What am I reaching for? She fell in love with lending. So, she started talking to these lenders, and she loved the whole idea of, helping people solve their problems, or helping them finance their dreams, and the analysis part of it, and it was perfect for her. So she went to her manager and she said, I would like to go to lending school. And the manager said to her, silly girl, tellers don't go to lending school. She was undaunted, loved this girl. She goes back to these lenders and says, again, the referrals that we talk about, how to build and grow and be abundant and how we work with each other. She went back to the lenders and said, I talk to hundreds of people every week, right, at that teller line. What should I be looking for that would tell me that this customer is a candidate for your services, that they need you? So they gave her some signals. They gave her some of the, if you hear this, if you see this, right? So she becomes very quickly the top referring teller on the planet. I mean, she is like a rock star. So she's thinking, now, surely I can go to lending school. She goes to the manager. The manager says, silly girl, tellers don't go to lending school. But would you mind sharing your secret sauce? Like, what are you doing that's creating all these referrals? And she said, absolutely. Freely gives it. She puts together a little cheat sheet, a little template. She does a little training session for all the other tellers, gives all that work away. And then she goes and takes the tax prep class right at night, so that she can learn how to read a financial statement, because good lenders know how to analyze a tax return. I love this girl. Nothing is going to stop her. She's just, I'm going to be a lender. So long story short, she is now running one of the largest lending operations in the country. She is absolutely amazing. But what I learned from her was even more precious to me. She said, long before my title changed, my peer group did. And I learned from that experience that I get to pick my peers. Nobody picks my peers for me. My position in my job does not define who my peers are. I define that by my initiative, by my curiosity, and by my willingness to explore, by my courage. I loved that story. I think I spent a lot of my life being what I thought I was supposed to be, as a banker, as a mom, as a wife. And maybe I'm just getting older now, and I'm learning that I want to be who I really am, because when you bring, again, there's the laws, right? When you bring that most authentic self to the moment, and you stop comparing and benchmarking yourself against everyone else. I mean, there's so many messages about how we're supposed to look, and what we're supposed to wear, and the bag that we're supposed to carry, and the shoes, and all of that. At the end of the day, who are you? What do you deeply care about, and how are you pursuing that with all of your might? How are you leaving this place better? How are you leaving your legacy? Not the legacy that someone else left, right? Because I think we spend a lot of time, again, benchmarking. I think it's very, very funny. Well, for Facebook, for example, I love social media, but we'll go through Facebook and we'll see all of these perfect lives just like streaming before us. And I've had people say, oh, everyone else's life is so exciting except for mine. You realize that you're watching their highlight video, right? You know, they didn't post their bad hair day. You know, you're watching the perfect moments in the lives of others, and then you're kind of backing yours up to that to say, wow, my life doesn't look like that. And by the way, I don't look like that when I get out of bed. Neither do they. Right. So we just, I think, need to relax a little bit and be a little more comfortable in who we are so that we can actually figure out who we can be.